Hello, everyone. I'm Mika. I'm going to be your host for this masterclass. We're going to talk about nervous system regulation when it pertains to ADHD because I feel like a lot of the nervous system regulation information that's out are focused on neurotypicals, and that is actually not solid advice that we can listen to. I wanted to make sure I put this out, so we're gonna have to bear with my raspy voice, but I will probably re-record this when my throat is better. I don't know, some random allergy attack, I guess. But I wanted to make sure that we can grasp this concept because it affects our everyday life when we have ADHD. And a lot of times we're scrolling on TikTok and on YouTube and we're listening and we're like, oh, nervous system regulation, and it is very, very important. However, we need to understand that our nervous system was probably programmed differently than neurotypicals, just because a lot of times what I would say co-occurs with ADHD is complex PTSD, because it tends to be a lot of childhood trauma, and that we've normalized. It was normalized probably from generation after generation, so you don't even realize it. But if you're in therapy or if you go to a therapist, they'll probably be like, oh my gosh, because their lifestyle was kind of different, or just the amount of trauma that you've normalized could be vast, it could be high. So I want to make sure that we have the information we need so we can thrive in life. Now, nervous system regulation is a term that's become very, very popular because I believe Age of Aquarius is all about bringing in innovation and, just disrupting systems and, things that were in place before. Before, it was more focused on head, brain, and oh, you can think your way out of things and stuff like that. Now they're coming to release more research that's telling us that pretty much how it was years and ages ago, really, that our bodies have a mind too. It's the body mind. And a lot of, I would say, teachers from years and years ago, especially in Eastern cultures, truly believe that the subconscious and everything, unconscious, subconscious, however you want, was in the body. And where sometimes the body could reject something, although the mind is oh yeah, this makes logical sense, right? The body is holding the trauma, and it unfortunately has not released that trauma. So one thing that we're going to talk about later on in the video is about implementing the body in, because I've seen a lot of success in my own life with just doing more somatic yoga and things like that. And I'm going to link the somatic yoga videos to our little post here, so that way you can find them. But just to break down, if this is the first time you're ever hearing about nervous system regulation, it's our bodies, our central nervous system, it has a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. And your sympathetic nervous system activates your trauma responses, your fight or flight, fawn or freeze, things like that, right? Your parasympathetic nervous system is pretty much kind of your rest and digest system. That's actually supposed to be activated more than your fight flight, because we're no longer in times where you got animals chasing you, you got tribes constantly fighting for territory and things of that nature. So we have to actually relearn how to be, really. And part of that is learning to consciously activate our parasympathetic nervous system more than we activate our sympathetic nervous system. And we have to become aware of when our sympathetic nervous system is acting out and kind of, I would say, ruining our lives, really. So what we're going to talk about first is the trauma responses, because when your nervous system your sympathetic nervous system is activating trauma responses. It is like your fight, your flight, your feet, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So a lot of us actually like live everyday life through one or a combination of these trauma responses. And a lot of times entrepreneurs don't realize they're running their businesses through these trauma responses. And in my other business where I do like brand design, I actually talk about the psychology when it comes to sales and pretty much being like an entrepreneur and possibly like operating your business through that. So it's I did a podcast and I did a season of it. It's like 14 episodes. The Selling Sanctuary is what it's called, is what the name is on YouTube. So you can, if that's you, you can probably like binge those videos, like those videos. They're not videos, they're just audio clips. So you can like play them while you're like working out or running your morning jog or whatever. But I'm going to use it in the context of like dating and like relationships, and especially for women in this, class. So we would say that when you're kind of like living your life through the fight trauma response as a woman with ADHD, you probably are attracting scenarios in your reality where it's constantly you being either like bullied, there's some type of injustice to you. You might attract partners who just do you wrong. Like you have to take them to court, or you have to. You might attract jobs, all types of scenarios where you have to like quote unquote fight people. Okay, that is when your life is kind of being filtered through your nervous system. That could be like, unfortunately, hardwired to like go into fight more than like flight or fawn or freeze. So if you could just like imagine like kind of like a car, right? And like different gears. Sometimes the clutches get stuck, so it gets stuck in a gear, and you can imagine it like you're stuck on fight. So like everything is a fight. You might raise kids and your children are constantly like having you feel like you have to argue with them. They don't listen to you. They are disrespectful, things like that. And you're thinking, like, because all this is unconscious, and like I talk about energetic entanglement. So I'll give you like a quick rundown of this. It's like, if you can imagine, we all have energy fields, right? And in those energy fields, you have pockets from, your childhood, inner child trauma, and each one is a pocket. So let's just imagine that you had like a caregiver who operated in fight trauma response, right? You have a pocket, an energy pocket in your energy field. And that pocket is based off of circumstances that activate your fight trauma response. Now, if that pocket is in your energy field, it has to have something feeding it. It has to stay pretty much as a pocket in your energy field. So what you don't realize is unconsciously you're attracting scenarios that are feeding this pocket. And like what they consider like when you're healing and when you're like doing the shadow work or whatever, what you're really doing is you're taking those pockets and you're dissolving them, and you're allowing the fluid and the energy to be transmuted into something that you intentionally want. That's what it is. When they say you have blockages, you can imagine it as pockets in your energy field. When they say that there's resistance, pockets in your energy field. And they want to be fed, okay? Just like the primal instinct of our consciousness is like everything wants to live and it wants to survive, if you can imagine that. So what you have, unfortunately, is you have a lot of pockets in your energy field that will only survive when the fight trauma response is activated and the hormones that's released in the body because of those scenarios are activated and feed those pockets. And you can probably just, I mean, it's no telling, depending on how traumatic your childhood was, there could be like thousands, you know? So it's constantly having to reevaluate yourself and say, wait a second, hold on, what is this? Why am I responding this way? Why am I triggered like this? And that's what they consider like shadow work in like the spiritual, world. But same thing. That's why even like Christianity is very big on like forgiveness and like letting things go and releasing it, because it's required. You have to let those energy pockets go. Even in like ancient mythology, they would talk about that at the end of like the afterlife, the end of your life, before you can enter the afterlife, your soul was placed on a scale, and if your soul was put on one scale, and then the other scale was a feather, and if it was heavier, then like apparently your soul was like devoured by like some other creature. But really what the context is that what weighs the soul down is like guilt, shame, resentment, all the things that the Bible tries to tell you to like let go and forgive, so you don't hold on to those emotions anymore. You can pretty much like dissolve the energy pockets in your energetic field. When you have a fight trauma response, you will unconsciously do this. You can attract partners where all they do is kind of pick fights with you. And you'll be like, oh, why? Like, you're provoking me to anger. And they're unconsciously doing it. And another thing that I talk about with like energetic entanglement, I'm going to do a class on this. But what it is like, okay, if you had a parent who had a fight trauma response, obviously I said it's in your pocket, right? In order for it to be filled, what did I say? You have to have, scenarios on an unconscious level. So like subconscious, your subconscious communicates with everybody that you consider as a potential partner. At a scan to say like, can this person activate the fight trauma response to keep me getting the, hormones and things like that I need to survive. This is like filling my energy pockets in my energy field, right? And you'll notice that like people who probably didn't have a fight trauma response, where they wouldn't have activated that for you, you want to try this on. You're like, they're boring. I'm just not interested. They seem like a nice person, but they're just not my type. And you have no idea why you're like that or why you're even saying it. That is unconsciously your energy pockets making sure that they survive. So, unfortunately, this happens a lot. And you'll be like, why am I like this? Why did I attract this chaotic, toxic partner? Why did I do this? And like, when I have clients where we work one-on-one for either like dating, relationship things, or like money, business things, we literally go through their childhood to see what the energetic patterns are that are like probably being replicated unconsciously, that are creating what they consider resistance for them receiving their desired, reality, goal, whatever it is. Same thing with your fight trauma response. So if it's flight, you can actually have, if you had a parent who had a fight trauma response and another parent who had a flight trauma response, and you happen to pick up the flight trauma response, you can attract a partner who has a fight trauma response that will make you flee. Because again, you can imagine nervous system hardwired for flight, right? What do you run from? What do you flee from? Right? Things that are not familiar. What your body will deem as dangerous or not safe. And what we realize is, and this is why I say we can't listen to neurotypical advice and teachings on the nervous system, because it's actually opposite for us. They will say that like, oh, if your body, like, if it's like something with chemistry, like, oh, if a person feels good to you and blah, 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 like, that's your body telling you like that person's meant for you. No, not true. Not true. Why? Because 9 times out of 10, the energy field, those pockets, and your energy field attracted that person because they want to survive, because they want to live. And that might work for neurotypicals, but it don't work for us because of our programming, because of what we went through as children. So the flight trauma response is 9 times out of 10 going to attract a partner who is a fight trauma response to keep the energy pockets of like running from stuff. Excuse me. Even if they don't attract a partner who has a fight trauma response, they might attract a partner who they consider like way out of their league, and they'll run from the potential of that person, like the potentiality of that, of who they would have to become in order to sustain a relationship with that person. And that's what they consider self-sabotage. That's about the flight trauma response. 10. Okay, so what I was saying, sorry, I'm gonna have to mush this together because my phone was like alerting a call. So what it means is like self-sabotage typically only happens in the flight trauma response. Dominant people, because they need something to run from. And that's what like self-sabotage is. It's like running. It's like running from whatever it is. Unfortunately, we're not taught this. And you're not even going to realize you're running. Your brain is going to give you logical, like, you're going to hear logical reasons on like why you shouldn't be with this person, or your body is going to feel so uncomfortable because that person's calmness and consistency and loyalty and like compassion and inner harmony are just so unfamiliar to your nervous system that it's like, yeah, not safe, like not safe, and we're not doing this. Yeah, that's a whole thing. So it's the same way. And that's why I say we can't listen to what the advice that they give out for the nervous system, because again, like I just said, it will be something that is actually safe for you, right? It's safe for you, but your body, your nervous system will be like tense. It'll feel like uncomfortable. It'll feel just like something's wrong. And it won't give you those warm, fuzzy feelings because it's unfamiliar. It's deemed not safe, although it is safe. And that's how people can be in very toxic, chaotic, dangerous relationships, where it's like very abusive and things like that. And people say, why don't they leave? How can they stay like this? It's because it's probably a very similar energetic pattern of their childhood, and that's what their nervous system deems as safe. So even when they met other people who weren't like that, who were actually safe and things like that, they probably weren't attracted to them. And this is why you can't listen to, you have to be very, very aware so you'll know really the difference between your intuition and like your body wanting like dopamine hits. And that's why I'm like, hey, our nervous system is very different. It's very different than a neurotypical's nervous system. And if you go off of the advice of like, oh, what feels good? Sometimes like we can just be like really enslaved to the body, where unconsciously the body is just in control. Everything in those energy pockets are just controlling us, and we'll be like, why? Like what after it's over, we're like, why? Why did we do this? Like, I mean, were we like completely disassociated? Like, what happened? I know when they say that like disassociation is typically when you're outside the body, but personally, I think disassociation is when the body is in control. And that's why the mind really doesn't even have like, I would say, cognition of like, what happened? What is going on right now? It has no memory. It has nothing. Because the only thing that was in control at that moment was the body. And that's why it's very, very important for like us, when we have ADHD, to like we have to fight. Like, we have to fight for our lives, because the whole system is, the advice could be vastly different. And is it saying? I don't know if it's still going. But we have to fight for our lives, because the advice is not the same. Is not, it cannot be applied to our lives and it be something positive, honestly. What's gonna end up happening is chaos. Chaos. And it sucks so bad, because we really need to hear like this at a young age. Like, we need to hear this when we're like 9 or 10. Like, hold on, wait a second. If something feels like good, quote unquote, wait, because depending on what our childhood was like, I would say a lot of us have a tendency of being like people pleasers. We were like the emotional caretakers of our families. We can tend to be like the eldest child, or had like a caregiver who was emotionally dependent on us, like codependency. There's just so many different like reasons why this is, but what I'm telling you is like very, very important for you to realize that you don't want to put yourself in a scenario where you're letting your body be into full control and you don't have no recollection of what's going on. You just don't want to do that. And when it's fun, I feel like that's actually like what happens when it's just fun. Like, we're like, our bodies are just moving, honestly. Like, they're moving, they're functioning. We can still go to work, we can still, quote unquote, like be there, like raise our kids, pick them up from school, drop them off from school, go to work, do our jobs, things like that. But there is actually like nothing conscious. There's no conscious activity of like, where do I want to be, you know, a year from now or 3 months from now? What are my goals? What am I working toward? There's really no will to really live. Like, there's no motivation. There's no, you can't even, you're still disconnected. You can't even feel your desires. And personally, I feel like the heart, like, what it really is like, you're living out of your body, out of your energy pockets, and like, not from your heart. And there's like an Egyptian mythology concept of when the mind is in the heart, that's when like you're in like divine order or divine alignment, and quote unquote intentional manifestation is easier. And I personally think that like when we're in fawn, that's why it's like almost like we're not manifesting anything. Like, we're literally like walking zombies and just living. I feel like that's the reason that happens. And that can honestly be because like so much trauma is just happening. Like, you're just, it could really be like a loop from your childhood. Like, if there's like just, if you don't remember a lot from your childhood, you probably lived a lot of your childhood in like fun. Because what tends to happen is that if you're not wired for like fight, like some of it is not fighters, right? And if you're not wired for fight, or you can even be a fighter, but then like you get beat down from like a parent or something, so then you go to flight, but you can't run from your parent because they're your caregiver. You go into fawn. And fawn is just like, you're just existing. Like, you're just existing in the body. Nobody's really home though. And we don't typically have a recollection of this, like recollection, like your memory recollection of it, because you're not in the heart. You're just in the body. And I think a lot of times when there's a lot of trauma, this happens. And I think that's what they call disassociation. Like, that is my theory on it. Because they really don't have a good reason for disassociation, especially like multiple like personalities, or just the fact that like people with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia and go through like intense trauma like PTSD, complex PTSD. So that definitely includes people with ADHD who have complex PTSD underlining. They can just like not have memories of stuff. Like they're moving, everybody around them are like, yeah, you went to this, you did that, you did this for like a whole, like it could be days, or it could be weeks, it could be months, it could even be a year, it could be years. And there's really not a scientific reason, like psychological reason for it. They're just like, it's a phenomenon that happens. They think like it's related to like a chemical imbalance. I don't believe that. And this is why I believe that like one of the Egyptian proverbs of like know thyself is you have to know. Like you have to know what you're capable of, what your, I would say like defense mechanisms are, what your trauma responses are, what your like, I would say like hormonal chemical addictions for your body are. Especially like with ADHD, like we know like dopamine, yeah, you know, but there tends to be like adrenaline and cortisol addictions that they don't teach us about, that they don't even really talk about. And that's why a lot of times we're very good at like quote unquote procrastinating for something and then like doing it, like knocking it out and getting like an A on the paper in the last like 24 hours is because our bodies have become addicted to cortisol, stress, adrenaline going, right? Constant, but like rapid going, like there's danger. Now the danger is that this paper is doing and you haven't done it and you knew about it for 3 months, right? And so like that adrenaline and that cortisol is needed, and like that's why you can unconsciously procrastinate. A lot of this is like really like relearning what life is supposed to be. So I would say just understanding that it's nothing good or bad. It's just knowing, like, if you don't want it, if you don't want this, excuse me, if you don't want this in your life and you don't want to live life like this, then like that's what happens. Freeze is typically like just crazy depression. Like, I mean, like, because like fawn is like you're kind of just like, I say traumatized, honestly, traumatized. You're just like deer in headlights, right? But what I've noticed that a lot of people who get traumatized, like they tend to say that freeze, you can like do everything I just said and fawn. And I've seen some people kind of do that where they were just in like freeze, but then I think a lot of times fawn, like you go from fawn to freeze. Like it's like at first when the trauma quote unquote happens, right? Like you're in fawn and it's automatic freeze, like fawn freeze. Like I feel like I don't feel like they're really separate. I feel like it's just like from one to the next and it just goes and you just kind of live in freeze. So I kind of like explained it that way, but like I forgot to tell you that ahead of time. But because I just don't believe that you can like ever live in like just like a stuck like, oh wow, I don't know what's going on in life. Like I don't believe you live like that. I believe like you can just get traumatized, which is like fun, and you're stopping and like your whole like system is like wait, and then just goes into freeze because it's like we don't know what else to do at this point, like no processing, and that's just the last result. And I think that a lot of times the last result or like resort, and I think a lot of times people live their whole life in freeze, just going unconsciously, so disconnected from their heart and letting their bodies just live and just just control everything. And I give you a breakdown of this because the parasympathetic nervous system, which can be activated by deep breathing, just like I think it's like the 4-7-8 method. But really it's just like inhaling for like 4 seconds. You can hold it for 7 and then like exhale out for 8. They just basically the concept is just to inhale, a certain like seconds, but then like to exhale and hold it for a certain seconds, like 5 at least, and then like exhale longer than you inhale. That's the like gist of it. Also like breathing from your diaphragm instead of breathing from your chest, because your chest is like, it's like rapid breathing versus like if you breathe from your diaphragm. And singers like train themselves to do this more often, but they sing through their diaphragm, and that's why their voices sound different. So that's a thing. I believe that like we have to get quiet. Like we have to get quiet. We have to allow ourselves time to just like rest. I don't know why that one piece is just sticking out like that. But we just have to get quiet and we just have to rest. I know a lot of times like the head noise. And personally the head noise went away for me. And I didn't even know it wasn't normal. So that's another thing. I didn't realize it wasn't normal until I got on medication for my ADHD. I thought that was normal. And then I got on like a certain level of medication and I realized that that wasn't normal. Also going out in nature, if you can do that, especially like in the morning, but at least on a consistent basis, it would be so helpful. Just being out in nature and like just feeling the breeze and being able to like, if you can go hug a tree daily, that'd be great too. It does wonders for your frequency and vibration. And what else? Okay, take bath daily. That's what I wrote down. So taking baths daily. I create my own bath salts with like certain oils for certain intentions that I set. But just taking a warm bath, because a lot of times they'll tell you, oh, take cold showers. That doesn't work for women. We should not really be taking cold showers because like we need to be reminded of the womb that's within us, which is like warm water and dark. So taking dark, warm baths could really help when you're like overwhelmed. What else? Make alarms for alarms if you have access to a therapist, family, like, you know, your family care practitioner, like a provider, where like they can help you figure out like what medicine. I know medicine management sucks because there's a lot of trial and error. But it's important because a lot of times you think that it's like, oh, you've been this way that long as you can remember and you think this is normal, but it's not. You can actually be calm and not have a whole bunch of like overwhelming, overthinking thoughts. What else? Journal. If you can journal, there's an app, How We Feel. I use that. It literally gives you a full range of emotions that you can be possibly feeling, because a lot of times when we have ADHD, we can have a very short range of emotions and we have no idea. So we could be saying like, oh, we're sad, but we're actually like, we could say we're tired, but we're not tired, we're depressed. You could say like, oh, I'm sad, but no, actually you're hopeless. So like it gives you the definition of the emotion and then you can pick it. But it gives you I would say like a journal, so you can kind of see how you've been feeling. That way you can actually use that to talk to your therapist or your physician. Also, moving your body every day, especially your hips. Your hips carry the trauma. So if like you can shake your hips on like a daily basis or do figure eights with your hips in the morning while you're brushing your teeth, washing your face, in a shower at nighttime, it will really help. And dancing will definitely help. Put on your favorite music and dance. When you feel overstimulated, when you're stressed out, dance. It works wonders for your kids too. EFT tapping will actually help with your, like, when you're just anxious about something, overwhelmed thinking, just tap. And you can look up EFT tapping on different things. They have like EFT tapping books for like, every time you're trying to like relearn something, you can tap and like help your body accept it. Also realizing that the concept of laziness probably has been like taught to you at a very like negative, unhelpful way. Is not lazy to rest. Rest is actually required. And like the Bible puts it this way, that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the idea of just realizing, hey, I need to rest, because the hustle and grind mentality is going to have you like chasing your tail constantly. Also, if you're not sure how you actually feel about yourself, like if you're like, oh yeah, I totally love myself, I don't deal with like low self-esteem or like self-love issues or whatever, write a love letter to yourself and see how long it takes you if you struggle with it, and then like read it back to yourself and always keep it. That would tell you wonders like on yourself, because again, like I would say, a lot of times they'll tell you that, oh, like if your body feels good, your heart rate's not up, blah, blah, blah. Like that's the indication that your nervous system is regulated. What they're not going to tell you is that our nervous systems, when we have ADHD, if we have underlying CPTSD, our nervous systems is regulated to chaos and toxicity. So it'd be polar opposite. When you feel calm, you need to question, wait, is this person inconsistent? And then they're giving me like that intermittent like addiction of like dopamine, because their inconsistency is like giving me a dopamine rush when they do reach out to me. And then when they don't, it's a dopamine rush of like when they're going to reach out to me and then like constantly doing it. Like you need to analyze and really, you know, question, is that what's going on here? Also, because like really when it's something new, it's going to feel like you're going to have the feelings of dysregulation when you're doing something right. And when it's like when you're moving toward the path of elevation, I wouldn't say right or wrong, but when you're moving toward the path of elevation, it could feel like dysregulation. If you're listening to that advice, it would be very backwards for you. So I just wanted to make sure I told y'all like a good breakdown of its opposite for us. We have to practice being uncomfortable and kind of sitting in the discomfort, because it could be years of being uncomfortable, because we're constantly relearning and having to realize that like what our bodies were programmed with and like what is considered normalcy for us is not necessarily normalcy. It could be toxicity and chaos, and that we have to be able to get behind energetically what is actually safe and what is dangerous, and relearn life, and then kind of have like our body relearn safety, what is dangerous, what is safe, what we should normalize. Right? So I love you guys. Sorry that this video might be a little muched up. I had to figure out how to work the do not disturb on this. So I love you guys.